I have honestly wanted to film this video since I first started doing videos where I travel. This is southwest North Dakota. Right here you're in a part that you may actually get a chance to see, but I'm going to travel a part of southwest North Dakota that most people never actually see because it's just so far out there in the middle of nowhere. Um, some of you are probably looking at this and saying, aren't we already there? But anyway, this video stops abruptly. I actually had a stopping point in mind, but my iPad had different ideas because it ran out of memory, and that was the end all of a sudden. But this is going to be a pretty long video, so just pretend you're riding along with me. I promise after I upload this epic video to YouTube, I'm going to use the utility that YouTube has for fixing shaky video, because this is shaky, I know. It's just one of those things that I need to fix. And you know, when you drive on a gravel road, you're going to get shaky video. It's just the way it is. But this, you may recognize like bits and pieces, you know, similarities to where I've driven before. Because, you know, I've only driven you around southwest North Dakota. This is in the Badlands. You're going to see not the touristy part of the Badlands. You know, if you want to see that, go to Medora, go to the Teddy Roosevelt National Park, both the north and south unit. You'll get a good close-up of Badlands. Here is the more, what's a good word for it? More down-to-earth part of the Badlands. More accessible, more usable. It's just a very nice landscape. And you'll get to see a few cows along the way also. And every so often you're going to see an MDH on some signs. That's a Montage Trail, which is a mountain biking trail that's in this area. And I own a mountain bike, but honestly I'm not a mountain biker. My mountain bike is a commuter around town, and every so often I'll take a longer bike ride just on the road. So probably a mountain bike wasn't the type of bike I should have. But anyway, let's get into our topic. Now, the Badlands where I'm forming this are along the shores of the Little Missouri River, which eventually feeds into the Missouri River, which eventually feeds into the Mississippi River. You'll only see the Little Missouri once or twice, just kind of from a distance. It'll be a reflective part, and I'll try to remember to point it out when I see it. But this is Badlands. Now, so let me tell you how these buttes form. It's erosion, and what you get is some kind of a rock on top or just hard soil or whatever, and so it protects everything underneath it, but what isn't protected washes away by erosion. And you know, like to the left there you saw a little bit of erosion, maybe. Well, you'll see some more here. Yeah, there's some. And so really, you know, it looks like rock from a distance, but it's actually very soft dirt. Now when I say soft, no, don't think like your garden soil. Oh, by the way, change of topic. This is a cattle guard. What they are, it's a series of metal poles that are parallel. And they're perpendicular to the road. And what it is cows don't like to walk across them. And if you think about it, you and I have very soft, very flexible feet. If we walk across it barefoot, we're just like, oh well. A cow has a very hard hoof, nothing flexible, so it's very slippery with holes. And I imagine the cow has this fear of getting her little hooves, well, big hooves, because they're big animals, getting her hooves caught in the holes. So they will not cross them. So you can have fence, big wide opening, they won't go through it. So that's kind of cool. At least I thought so. And this is open range. We are actually going to get stopped by a few cattle along the way. You're also going to see some oil activity. I think we just passed some, but I forgot to remark on it. You'll see a few oil wells, roads to get to oil wells and such. You know, yeah, that's oil there. Not a very good picture of it. And my windshield, by the way, is covered with bug splatters. I washed it off with plans of you being able to see through it for this video, but you know what? By the time I got here, it's covered with bugs again, and you'll probably see a few more bite the dust along the way. But anyway, there's some of these buttes I was talking about that have been eroded over time. Now, we've had a lot of rain the last 2 years, so they're much more green than I'm used to. Usually they're just bare dirt, and then the flatter parts are where the green is. Now, I'll tell you a little something about, there's another cattle guard, a little something about the soil here. if you go into my garden, when I first started gardening here, it was awful. I thought it was full of rocks at first, but what it was, it's actually soil. It just compacts so much that it behaves like a rock once it's dry. That's what you have here. Now in my garden, of course, I've had to fix it over the years by adding organic material to it. I put in peat moss, and I put in compost and grass clippings and whatnot to make the soil better. But you know, right there, this one they were coming up on. Nobody's doing that. It's just dirt that's hard packed. So it will eventually wear away. The landscape will change. This is not the landscape the early explorers would have seen, and it's not exactly the landscape my grandchildren will see. It's just going to continually change. Now, I think it's protected a little because this is a very dry area of North Dakota. If you took this, say, to Pennsylvania, where it's much wetter, I don't think this landscape would look the same. So, yeah, I'm going to pause now, let my fan cool off the computer. I suspect this was called the Badlands originally because it just didn't look to the original settlers like it was good for anything. Now remember, what the original settlers were coming out here for wasn't scenery. They were coming out, oh, another cattle guard. They were coming out here for farming, because that's how, up until very recently, the majority of the human race made its living, was farming. And this is not good farming country. I was actually on my way back from Minot when I filmed this, if you know where Minot is. That's a very, or go to eastern North Dakota, it's very agricultural, it's very flat. You see field after field, and have you noticed any fields yet? You might see, well, I know along the way you're going to see one or two patches of fields, but look at that. Can you imagine trying to farm that? Ew. So what a lot of this country eventually became, there's some oil, what a lot of this country eventually became was grazing land for cattle. Because then it doesn't matter as much if it's not flat, because you can run a cow on this kind of stuff. They're kind of amazing how they can crawl up and down these things. And the cattle they were raising back then was more of the Texas Longhorns. In fact, sometimes driving this road, I've run into a few Texas Longhorns descended from the originals that are just kind of running wild. In this video, I think you're just going to see, if I remember right, it's just Angus and Herefords that we're going to see. And of course, that's more modern agriculture, not the original. But anyway, here I had my first memory loss in the iPad, so I deleted my last drive off the iPad and then moved on and thought, okay, I'll be fine now.
So
but
yeah,
that was not to be.
Deleted videos that were old
So if you drive around eastern North Dakota or central North Dakota, the roads are pretty straight. I would not call this a straight road. Even a lot of the roads I've driven you on before are pretty straight. Not this one. Trying to get around all these buttes, that's, I admire the people who built this. And you notice how the road is kind of red, and you're going to see some reddish rock also in the buttes. This is what's called scoria. Now what scoria is, it's a clay. But there is a lot of coal in this area, and there used to be a lot more. Or there'd be but it would catch fire, lightning strikes or whatnot, and it would actually fire the clay. And what you get is this red rock called scoria. So a lot of roads around this part of the state are made with scoria. I think it looks kind of nifty, especially when it's green like this and you've just had a rain that really brings out the red in the road. I have photographs of that. It's just so cool. I love that. But anyway, it's cheap and available rock for this part of the state. So that's why you see it. If you ever go to eastern North Dakota, there's a lot of gravel roads there too, but they're a lot straighter because the land is very flat there. But it's also very good farmland, so it's just awesome to have these straight, flat roads kind of parceling up the agricultural land. Here in the west, it's not really feasible to make the roads straight, so even my other roads I've taken you on have got some curve to them. And you're just trying to work around this. Now, what was I going to say there? I just lost my train of thought. Oh, the other thing I was going to mention, you're going to see a lot more trees here. I'm not sure really what eastern North Dakota was like originally. I have this picture of grass, but now it's a lot of agriculture there more than anything. The trees in eastern North Dakota pretty much grow in straight lines because they were planted as windbreaks or to protect farms or whatever. Here, you're going to see, well, there's some cedar. You'll see, there's a few Chinese elm and some cottonwoods, especially down along the river. You're also going to see, in a big way coming up, in fact, you probably can't pick it out yet, but it's off in the horizon there, some ponderosa pine. Ponderosa pine is pretty cool because it likes these dry areas. But it doesn't grow a forest like you might think of from the East Coast or, Washington State where it's really wet. Ponderosa pine are more of a, well, they're good for this climate. The way they like to grow is they'll grow kind of spread apart. That way, when there's fire, because fire is just a perfectly real thing here, the fire will get going, it'll whip along right through the grass, and grass burns very quickly, and it won't really hurt the trees. But what that does for the landscape is, look at that view. What it does for the landscape is it kind of clears out the underbrush. And the underbrush is like perfect tinder for starting a fire. So, I'd say that's a good thing. But when people moved out here, I'm moving my microphone here. When people moved out here, one of the things they started to do was say, oh, fire is bad, just listen to Smokey Bear. So they would fight fires. Now when you start fighting the fires, now nothing is cleaning out the underbrush. Of course, with the underbrush not being cleared out anymore, now when a fire gets going, there's all that tinder, and the fire can really take off, and then it leaps into the upper stories and actually attacks the trees. Whereas before, all it really did was help open pine cones and clear out the competition. Now, you've got a problem. In fact, toward the end of this video, thankfully before the iPad ran out of memory the second time, we're going to go through a forest where there was a forest fire. Now, it's not as impressive as it was the very first time I went through there, because time has taken its toll and these dead trees are falling down and so on. But it happened because people had fought forest fires and allowed the thing to overgrow. Now, what you'll find people doing is there are actually summer jobs where people can go in there and they're paid to cut out this brush. And then when the weather's right, they burn it so that they can get this landscape back to its more natural state. Now, I'm not sure how natural or unnatural it is right here. What we're going through is a patchwork. Some of it is national grassland, some of it is private land, and I guess without a good map or a GPS, it's really hard to tell which one you're on at any given time. But very interesting. You'll see every so often there's kind of a silvery gray plant out there. That's sage. I want to say this yellow plant is sweet clover, but I can't remember for sure. If it's leafy spurge, I'm going to feel stupid, but I don't think it is. Anyway, we've been driving along here. I think it's time for me to find a topic. Oh, one other thing, real quick. There's a campground in my neighborhood. Oops, I just dropped something. There's a campground in my neighborhood, which, it's North Dakota. It is actually built where there was a burning coal mine. Now, apparently the coal fire did finally go out, but there are trees around there that are still stunted because of how they grew with the air pollution thanks for this burning coal vein. Did I say coal mine? It was just a vein. It was all natural. It was probably started by a brush fire because the coal here is often quite close to the surface. In fact, there's 2 roads I'd love to take you on. This is one of them, and the other one you'll have to see another time. But anyway, the other one, there is actually coal laying out in the open. But anyway, it made columnar juniper and things that were formed because of the air pollution created by this burning coal vein. So, burning coal veins have been just a natural thing. Now, I know sometimes they're trouble, like I'm from Pennsylvania. I do know about Centralia, Pennsylvania. But I just still find that very interesting. But the coal here is different than Pennsylvania coal, and definitely not what you're seeing in Centralia. But people remember going out to this campground and they could see the fire, and every so often would find its way to the surface and just kind of take off for a while. They could see the smoke coming out of the ground. There's some cattle. These are Angus, black Angus. That's kind of the most popular cow around here, by the way. But they'd see the coal just kind of coming out, or the fire just going, and smoke coming out of the ground. I honestly, I wish I could have seen that. That sounds very interesting to me. But like I said, the vein seems to have pretty much run itself through. All right. Oh yeah, and one other thing, since this is open range, you're going to see that the cows leave little presents on the road. I don't think the microphone on the iPad is going to pick it up over the other noise, but if you run through them with your car, you hear kind of a weird wet squish, and then you hear it slap against the wheel wells as it spins off of the tires. It falls off or dries up or something. But yeah, you will get that on your car too, driving these roads. Now, when I first started seeing this open range stuff, again, I grew up on the East Coast. I thought, well, what about liability? I mean, I'm driving along now. Admittedly, I'm not actually going that fast, although it probably looks like it with this iPad camera. But if I'm driving along here and boing, out pops a Angus as I'm turning a corner, he's going to do kind of a lot of damage to my car and probably to me, because an Angus weighs about what a car weighs. They're big animals. Well, apparently, in open range, the rancher has very limited liability for any vehicle animal accidents. In fact, I might even have some liability for hitting the Angus in this country. Now, the road I take to church is not open range. The road I take to church, if I run into a cow there, that means she's escaped from the fence, and the rancher is liable for any damage. So I just found that interesting. Again, I grew up on the East Coast where things were a little bit different. Now, a few years ago, I drove through Wyoming, and speed limits there are quite a bit higher. And I was on a two-lane road, paved two-lane road, probably going about 70 miles an hour. And, there's some cattle right along the road. Yeah. Now imagine coming up on this at 70 miles an hour, or some of the stuff we're going to see later at 70. Oh, look, a little baby calf. Some of the other stuff we'll see at 70 miles an hour. Yeah, dirty windshield. Yeah, they're so cute when they're little. And you should see the mothers when they're about to give birth. They're just so wide and ridiculous looking. And then they're such good mothers. It's just kind of cool how they take care of their little baby calves. But a lot of them get confused. Some types of cow, anyway, get confused if they have more than one calf. But anyway, I was in Wyoming a few years ago, and they had 70-mile-an-hour speed limit. Again, it was open range land. I just thought, wow, Wyoming at 70 miles an hour, you don't have a whole lot of time to react. Now, you'll see me as we go along this road having to react a few times. And like I said, I'm going slow enough that I can react, even though this road, we don't see that far ahead here, do we? And one of the things I like with cows, unless they get spooked, they're pretty complacent. They just kind of stare at you like, what? And you can drive right by them. Now, deer, especially the white-tailed deer, will panic. It's just like that. Oh no, a car! And they run right in front of you. You're done. So is your deer. But the cows, I've never had one just panic and run in front of me. I'm sure they could. And I don't know, it seems like the calves are more likely to panic. The calves, after the iPad ran out, I went further on the road, and there were some cute little Hereford calves I was trying to take pictures of. And as soon as I got out of the car, they just headed for the hills. The adults are all there. Oh, it's a person. The calves just, oh, what is it? Oh, run away! There's some more oil activity. Those are some, just drawing a complete blank there. Tanks, and there's an oil well. That oil is helping to pay for this nice road. When I first moved here, these roads were not this nice. You're going to see, I think it's before the iPad ran out. You're going to see a couple places where it used to be these horrible wooden bridges where you'd pretty much have to get your car wheels lined up perfectly with the board so you didn't, go over into the ditch, or because there's no deep rivers or anything, like a third world country wooden bridge. But now they've all been replaced with something much better. In fact, I said this is one of the 2 drives I'd like to take you. The other drive that I want to take you on used to have low water crossings, like you would actually drive through the stream, which was kind of nerve-wracking in a Camry the first few times, but I got used to it, and of course I would always stop and check the water before I drove through it, just to make sure it wasn't too deep, because Toyota Camry, hello! You also might have noticed the road is getting rougher here. Where my memory ran out the first time, there was a road grader park. They with a gravel road or a dirt road, it has to be graded every year or two, just because when it's wet, you build up ruts. These aren't bad ruts like I've seen on other roads, but you still rut them. They get rougher, and just to sort of pull everything to the center so the water runs off the road instead of sitting on it, and making it muddy. And yeah, so this part hasn't been graded yet, and it's going to get even more interesting as we go along here. But here's one of those signs that doesn't look like you can read it anyway. But there's some signs along here. I think I mentioned the Montage Trail, and that's a trailhead there that we just passed. I don't know why I didn't give you a close-up of one of the trailheads at least. I've never gone biking on the Montage Trail because, like I said, I'm not a real serious biker. I would rather walk than bike. To me, biking is just a fast walk. But anyway, I'm going to pause and let the fan cool off again, but wow, what beautiful land. And I still haven't gotten to my actual topic for this video yet, have I? So, even though I've babbled long enough about North Dakota, I'm actually going to start talking now about my real topic, which is contentment. But there's interesting things along the way that I'm going to sidetrack and talk about. In fact, we're going to get... Yeah, we're coming up on one of those things right now. This is a little scene I almost cut from the video. But since it's the lady who's about to take charge here, I decided whatever's going on there isn't quite what it looked like from at first glance. And if you are wondering how I know it's the lady taking charge, get somebody to explain it to you, because I'm not going to explain it in a video. But yeah, anyway, so there they are standing in the road, because this is open range, so always pay attention when you're driving an open range. Yeah, that one doesn't want to move. There we go. They will move, and if they don't move, if you slowly kind of creep up on them, they'll usually get out of your way. Buffalo are a lot more stubborn, but there aren't many buffalo wandering around this area. They're more in the park, so that's good. But yeah, buffalo are very stubborn, and buffalo are also a lot more aggressive if you ever happen to run into one. Do not pet the buffalo. I wouldn't recommend being that friendly with these Angus either, but they're definitely a lot friendlier than a buffalo is. Because buffalo, well, they're just mean. And if you want to pet a cow, the best cow to pet is a Hereford, because they're a lot friendlier. But I would just leave. If you're not used to animals, just leave them alone. That's generally what I do, because I'm getting used to them. But anyway, back on topic. So I was going to talk about contentment, which is actually kind of related to my video I did a month or two ago about enough. Actually, it's very closely related. Now, when I talk about contentment, what I'm really talking about is, I guess, having enough. But it's more than just material possessions. So let me give you a little bit of idea what I mean. What we're driving through right here, we're going to run across a few ranch houses and things. Not very many, because it's pretty remote. But there's one in particular. I'll point it out when we go past it. I would just love to live there. In fact, I'd love to live out here. It'd just be pretty awesome. Now, I've said this is not a religious channel. I'm not going to start making a religious channel, but there's a reason that one of the 10 Commandments has to do with coveting things that our neighbor has. Whether it's his wife, his kids, I forget what all's in that commandment. But anyway, my point is, I could dwell on the fact that I live in town, I don't have this amazing landscape. And so if you're going, and I won't be content. I'll always be thinking about what I could have, what I could create here. Now, so I live in town. I'm going to accept that because there is actually a lot of bad that comes with living out here. Because imagine this road in the winter. I have a few winter photographs from this road, but not very many. And you know why? Because this road isn't real nice to travel on in the winter. Some of these roads will be blocked for a long time in the winter. That is something I would not like. Much as I may covet living out here, realistically, unless I want everything else that goes with it, like being cut off, all the hard work that you have to do as a rancher, I think I'm better off living in town. There's no way I'd be a teacher living out here because you have no idea how far I am, but what a commute. Horrible commute. Plus, I'm single, and I just can't imagine being out here and being single and taking care of everything yourself, and watching the cattle and all the hard work, and just sort of, very isolated. So, okay, maybe I can convince myself that I'm better off in town. But am I still going to be content? Now, I hate to say it, I did actually want a small house. I did actually want to walk to work, so I've got those things. But I'll be honest, my house isn't that nice. It looks okay from the outside, but inside, if you saw it, you'd just be like, oh, he's not living in that nice of a place. I'm working on it, but it really, at the moment, it's not a nice house. So anyway, I bring that up because I could keep thinking about all that my house does not have. And all that I wish it had. I mean, I have floor plans because kind of one of my things I enjoy doing is designing floor plans of houses. If I weren't a teacher, I might become a residential architect. That's just something I enjoy. And I'll think about it. Every lot I've lived on, I've kind of sketched out a floor plan for what would be a great house for it. I've got a floor plan for this lot. And it's really probably about the same size as what I live in now, maybe even a little bit smaller, just because the layout's better. But my point is, I'll probably never have that house. So instead of spending my time worrying about the house I don't have, what if I spend my time worrying about the house that I do have and making it better? And I said it's not very nice. Well, I'll tell you, part of the reason it's not very nice is the previous owner started a lot of projects, never finished them. Never put in the trim. She never finished the floor. Let's see. I really desperately need to paint the ceiling in the kitchen. And because old cabinets were ripped out and new ones were put in that don't match the old ones, there's this horrible textured ceiling, which is what do they call popcorn ceiling, and then it kind of stops and there's a line where the old counters were attached, or the old cabinets were attached to the ceiling that I've got to fix. So that looks awful. But you know what? Instead of dwelling on how it looks, why don't I fix what I have? Part of contentment is making your own world better. And also at times accepting what you have. Like, floor plan of this house, that's not going to change. Structurally, there's a couple little things I could do, but seriously, there's no way to really change the structure of this house. It is what it is. It's going to be like this. So, rather than worry about what it isn't, why don't I worry about what it is? That's what contentment is. So basically, instead of worrying about what I don't have, what I should worry about instead is making what I do have better. Because one of the things I don't like with this whole contentment thing is some people think accepting things the way they are and just saying, well, it's good enough. Years ago, somebody, what was his name? Louis Pasteur? I might have the name wrong. I didn't look this up. But let's just say it's Louis Pasteur said, could just accept people getting sick with smallpox, but you know what? I'm going to try and do something about it to make it better and actually find a way to prevent people getting this horrible disease. So he discovered a vaccine for it. Now, admittedly, there was some human experimentation along the way, and which is an interesting story if you ever get a chance to read about it. But he made things better. So I'm going to keep making things better. I painted the house outside. I'm working on the inside, putting in the trim. It's going to be a few more years of work. The kitchen is going to be interesting. I still don't know exactly how I'm going to fix the problem in the kitchen, but I'll get there. Oh, by the way, off the topic, but did you see that? The layers? Hopefully I'll do another quick close-up of the buttes, the soil. But one of the things I just love about the Badlands is you can see the layers in the soil. It's just, you're looking back through time. There's a reason that they do a lot of dinosaur digging out in this area. You just really are looking backward in time. And of course you see the scoria here, which seems to crop up randomly, but I told you how that forms. Okay, so back on topic. My big thing is just to find that contentment with what you have. Doesn't mean saying it's just accepting the status quo, but it does mean instead of worrying about what you don't have, you spend your time worrying about what you can have and what you can make. By the way, this is one of the ranches. It's not the one that I'm a little envious of. It's the next one. But, this is still a nice setting here. I just happen to like the next one. Will come across a lot better. And, you know why they put the ranch there? You see all that flat land? You'll look for the exact same thing at the next ranch. There's not much flat land here. So, they need a place to get hay for their horses horses too. Horses and cattle in the winter. And so there was a good spot to grow it. And you couldn't tell, but I know, so just trust me. It's right along the river, the Little Missouri River that I mentioned. It's right there. All right, so anyway, back on the topic of contentment. So anyway, with coveting, there's probably a reason that the commandment lists several things, and why the Catholics have covetousness. See the layers there? Why the Catholics have coveting as one of the 7 deadly sins, because it really can take you away from what you have and make you focus on what you don't have. The commandment talks about don't covet your neighbor's wife. Instead of worrying about, and the Bible is very male-centric. I mean, if you're female listening to this, don't covet your neighbor's husband. Same thing. You don't, instead of worrying about what they have, worry about what you have. Instead of saying, oh, they have the perfect relationship, think about, how can I make my relationship better? I'll be honest, that's a lesson that was very hard for me to learn. I'll admit something I don't like to admit very often, but it's buried deep enough in this video, I don't think anybody's listening by now anyway. I moved to North Dakota in fall of 1999, and I was very excited about it. I thought North Dakota would be a good change from Pennsylvania. I got my first job at a small rural school. I actually had a lab that I have never had one as nice since then. I've had newer labs, but never see the erosion there and the layers. I've had newer labs, but never one as well equipped and well laid out. It was just an incredible room. Very retro 1950s furnishing is in it, but wow, I wish I had it now. See, coveting. But my point is, I did have, I was happy for a while, but then I started thinking, well, boy, I wish I had this, and I wish I had that. I wish I had better students. I wish I had a better variety of classes. And, I started looking at everything I didn't have. And you know what? I switched jobs to another school about the same size. Now, the lab wasn't as nice, but it was a lot newer. Although it was carpeted, which never, ever carpet a science lab, especially in a high school, because by the end of the year, it gets pretty gross. But back on topic. I started doing the same thing there. Instead of worrying about what I had, I started thinking about what I didn't have. And I just thought, well, I'm going to switch jobs again. So I did. Now, that was the first 6 years of my career. I spent 3 years in the first school, 3 years in the second school. They had enrollments of about 160 kids, K through 12. I went on to a school that had an enrollment of about 430 kids, K through 12. So big jump up. I had fewer classes. I taught just as many periods, but I doubled up some of my classes, which made it a little nicer. But what I walked into was a much, much worse situation. Now, I think the school had a lot of potential, but There were some issues there that I don't want to get into because this is public and who knows who's listening to it. But there are issues there that made me really say, I made a mistake coming to this school. And I ended up leaving there after a year. And I'll tell you, that was the wake-up call I really needed. Because what I finally saw was how much, instead of trying to make my situation better, I'd been just running from what I had, looking for the next bit, looking for something better. So I came to where I'm at now. I got promised one lab. I got put into a different room for what I was promised. And I was promised a very nice classroom. What I got put in was awful. I mean, I don't even have sinks at my lab tables or electrical outlets or gas jets at my lab tables. It's terrible for what I teach. You know, just try doing chemistry without sinks right there. It has been an interesting 9 years. But I'll tell you, I was I was kind of angry. By the way, that's the ranch I really covet. Look at that. You kind of missed the house now, but wow. That's gorgeous. And I know the people who own it, by the way. But, yeah, they're not selling. I couldn't afford it if they were. All right, back on topic. Anyway, I was pretty angry about, especially when they put a math teacher of all things into the nice science room. But anyway, instead of being angry about it, because I had plans of like, well, they told me to just switch rooms every time I want to do a lab. I'm just going to switch rooms all the time and really inconvenience this math teacher. I had all these thoughts. And instead, I finally, and thankfully before school, I grew up and realized this. I said, you know what? Why don't I make the best of what I do have? And for 9 years, I have. I bought alcohol burners. So we use them for a lot of our labs since I can't use Bunsen burners. There's one or two labs where I do end up having to switch rooms just for safety reasons or, you know, for the whole, I want to get it done before the week's out reasons. But I don't switch rooms anymore very often. Why not have them bring plastic tubs to their tables? They can use them for water if they need. So I found a lot of ways to get around the kind of serious limitations of the room I was stuck with. And you know what? I learned a lot, and this coming year, unless something really bad happens, I am finally going to be in that good science room. So, you know, I guess I am finally getting what I covet, which might be undermining my whole point. But the point is, until this year, I made that crappy, horrible room I was stuck in work. Instead of worrying about what I didn't have, I made the best of what I did have, and I created and I learned a bunch. So think about that when you start coveting. And, you know, instead of what I don't have, what can I make out of what I do have? Now I apologize for the glare on the windshield. I'll just tell you before I move on with contentment again. This is a nice drive. I've done it going this way. I'm going south, although it does wind around. Done it going south in the morning once. It's a totally different drive if you do it in the morning. If I go north, it's a totally different drive, both morning and night. And I've done the north drive mostly in the morning because I'm actually headed towards home here. And only done this going north drive in the afternoon once. But morning and evening are the best times, but it's a totally different drive. So I could get 4 different drives out of this one road just because of the different times of the day and the different directions. I got hiccups, so I'm going to hit pause again. So, just in case you're wondering, holding your breath really does help cure hiccups. Sorry. All right. So here I'm going to turn. If I kept going straight, eventually I'll end up out on the highway. No, it's kind of neat to go straight. You actually end up in that campground also where I said that you can see the burning coal vein. But yeah, I'm turning here, and I'm definitely now off the beaten path. Now, I'm going to go through a ranch here that's been talked about in the New York Times. I'm not going to give it, well, what the heck, you just read it on the sign. Logging Camp Ranch. There you go. This guy actually rents out cabins and such, which I think is kind of cool. I taught his daughter, his youngest daughter. I didn't teach the rest of them. But anyway, this road is where things get interesting. But anyway, I was talking about coveting, and coveting can really mess with your spouses and your family relationships. And I'll just say, I'm going to get a little editorial here. I'm going to have to be careful because I am a teacher. But one of the interesting things about teaching is you get quite an insight into family dynamics. I also used to be an EMT, and I got an interesting insight there. I got to be careful because there are some laws about protecting private information, so I'm going to be really careful. So if I get really generic here, that is why. There are laws that I have to observe. But I have met parents who just openly compare their kids to other kids. I wish. Okay, let's see. How do I say this? I had one student who had the same last name as another student and actually looked a lot like this other student. So I kind of, as a new person to the community, thought they were brothers. So I asked the mother of the other student if they were if that was her son, and she said, "Oh yeah, I wish. I'd trade mine in a heartbeat." And that's a verbatim quote because it just like, whoa, did I just seriously hear a mother say that about her own son? I liked her son. He was never going to be, one of these stellar academic or athletic students, but he was a really nice kid. And, he's somebody who's going to be successful in life, and is successful in life because this was a number of years ago, and I know how the story turned out for both of them. They both turned out real well, but the point is, I just couldn't believe that a mother would say that about her own kid. I had another father once tell me how if his daughter got out of line in my class, I should just grab her hair and slam her head against the desk. And just go, what? And, I won't tell you how that turned out because there we're going to get into some legal stuff. But, yeah. Anyway, and you see it, husbands and wives. Wives will be complaining about their husband all the time. And instead of worrying about what your husband or your wife or your kid isn't, worry about what they are. I'll use myself as an example. You've all seen what I look like. I'm not ugly, but I'm not, a supermodel by any means. I've never been really good looking. I'm just sort of average. But instead of worrying about what I don't look like, I'm no Matt Damon, for example. Why don't I worry about what I do look like and just make the best of it? Like, maybe I should lose a few pounds. Now, I have actually. I used to weigh more than I do now. I still could lose a few more pounds, but I'm down to a decent waist size. I want to drop 2 more waist sizes yet. But I was once, what am I now? I have actually dropped 4 waist sizes from what I was. I used to be quite a bit heavier. Now, again, I'm never going to look like, fill in your favorite good-looking actor, especially now that I'm getting older. I'm almost 40. But I can make the best of what I have. And, let's expand that a little bit to relationships. By the way, isn't this kind of neat how narrow this road is? This is not a well-traveled road at all. And I know the first time I drove on this road, they must have graded it or done something to it because I've driven it. Oh, they've worked on it. Yeah, I remember this now. This is where that bridge I was talking about was. That wooden bridge. I think we're coming up on the bridge because I see the trees along the stream there. The bridge is gone here. There was a interesting bridge here. I wonder if I have a photo. Let me pause this and see if I have a photo. Couldn't find my picture of the actual bridge, but this is a similar bridge. It's actually in better condition on another road, which is the other of the 2 wonderful drives I'd like to take you on. But anyway, back to the real drive here. So I think I was talking about the whole topic of enough, wasn't I? Anyway, back on topic. By the way, that's off topic again. But that's a ponderosa pine forest we're about to drive through. Anyway, on topic with enough. Or contentment, sorry. Some parents just are disappointed with their kid because he's not what they wanted or what they dreamed their kid is. Some parents actually try to live out their high school glory days that they never had through their kid, and I just think that's so sad. So maybe you have a kid who's not a stellar athlete. You always want to encourage them to try some of this stuff, but maybe you should be pleased that your kid is really good in music. Or maybe you're a musical person, your kid is really athletically talented. Or maybe your kid is brilliant in science. Appreciate them for what they are, not for what you wish they were. And I would say a lot of marriage problems could be solved the same way. Maybe you wish your husband was more cultured and romantic. Maybe you wish your wife could drop a few waist sizes. And you always want to encourage people to do their best and be better, but accept that they are good at it. Maybe your wife's a really good cook, or your wife is really good at gardening, or your wife, in some cases, maybe your wife's really good at fixing the car. Maybe your husband is good at fixing things. Maybe your husband's a good cook, whatever. Accept and enjoy their talents and their gifts that they do have before you start worrying about faults. And, seriously, a lot of times, maybe a good look at yourself first before you start looking at what you wish your kid or your spouse had. I've seen enough marriages where maybe the wife would lose weight or the husband would lose weight if they were made to feel attractive once in a while, instead of just criticized for what they aren't. I'll be honest, part of what made me drop all those waist sizes was, I'm not dating her anymore, but somebody I was dating who actually was interested in me physically and made me want to be even better for her physically. And that's as much detail as you're going to get. But, that really worked for me. She could have said, oh, gee, that size 40 waist is kind of gross on somebody your size. And, I was kind of gross and I knew it, but it didn't affect me. But instead, she thought I was attractive, which is not something I'm really used to. I mean, if people start telling me how good looking I am, that does actually make me very uncomfortable, but at the same time, it is kind of flattering if they do it right, and she knew how to do it. I've dated women before who made me uncomfortable that way, but she, there were other reasons why we're no longer together, but she really knew how to make me feel hot, and that's not me at all. I mean, you've seen my videos, but yeah. And she made me want to be better. But I just see so many marriages where I just think, that's what would do it. Treat him like your husband instead of talking about his shortcomings. Or treat her like your wife instead of all the things she isn't. And you'll get those other things because she'll want to, just for you. And then same thing with kids. I'm not married, so I'm more of an expert on kids because I teach them. Instead of criticizing your kid constantly because of the missed shot at a basketball game or because he got a B on a test instead of an A, say, wow, that was really awesome how you played defense there, or wow, you were really good in that play, or wow, okay, so science isn't your thing, but wow, you look at that essay you wrote. Appreciate their gifts before you start pointing out faults, and then look at yourself. I think I said that already and then I got sidetracked, but if I'm going to criticize somebody else's weight, how about I look at my waist first? And I finally am looking at my waist. Like I said, I've dropped a number of waist sizes and I plan to drop 2 more. I have looked at my pictures from when I was in high school, and I don't want to be that size ever again because I was really skinny in high school and looked like a skeleton, and yeah, I just don't look good at that skinny. So I want to find that happy medium, and I'm getting there. Okay, but that's looking at myself. Now, if we're going to criticize a kid for how they are in sports, how are you in sports? You're going to criticize a kid because all they want to do is play video games. Oh, how much time are you spending in front of the TV or sitting and watching videos while somebody drives along dirt roads? Make yourself better. There's a Bible verse that says it's something along the lines of, before you pick out the mote in somebody else's eye, pick out the beam in your own eye. Fix yourself first and before you worry about other people's faults. And that's been a hard lesson for me, because it's a lot easier to pick out other people's faults than it is to look at myself. That waist size is just one of them. There have been a lot of things I've had to look at in myself. I'm going to pause here and let the fan cool off. I'll give you one example, and this is one I don't admit to people very often, but it used to bother me that I didn't have many friends and other people did. And you know, I could have been coveting friends and jealous and all that business, but you know what I realized? And it took me a long time to realize this. There was a reason I didn't have many friends. It's because I was really shy, really introverted, and did not make much effort to be social. So there's two things that I've done since then to deal. Oh, by the way, that's a road grader. It's a road grader with a lot of extra stuff on it, because they're trying to do lots of jobs at once with this one road grader. Anyway, what I had to learn was, first of all, you have to put yourself out there and take risks to have friends. And I've gotten better at that. You know, I'm still not great at that, but I have improved so much. That's one of the lessons I had to learn. I'm going to start putting the iPad down a lot to take pictures, because there, as you can see, there's some neat pictures there. But that was one of the things. Another thing I had to learn was how to be assertive. Obviously, I just got out of the car to take a picture. But I had to learn to be assertive and push my way into conversations. And I had to learn to make mistakes and learn to have people laugh at me. And I had to learn that I'm not always right. Sometimes I'm wrong. Just so many things I had to change about myself. You know, instead I could have been jealous, but you know what? I was creating a lot of the problems. My personality is the reason I didn't have many friends. I actually took some photographs here I'm gonna throw at the end of the video. But I'm getting close to where my iPad ran out. I think I have 8 minutes left. Got 52 minutes, yep. I don't have much left. Anyway, we're gonna come here into where the forest fire was, but I don't want to leave this alone yet. In fact, I think looking out at the forest fire, but again, you can't see it like you used to be able to. So I'll throw some photographs on the end that I took years ago of the forest fire. But what I keep distracting myself from saying, because it's difficult for me to admit when I'm at fault, it still is. I just was not a social person. I wasn't somebody you would want to be friends with. I'm better now. You know, I'm very good about going and talking to the neighbors. And, you know, one of the things that actually helps a lot is not being in high school. You know, as a teacher, I can really see it. Kids in high school are rotten to each other. They just are. You know, there's a lot of good things that happen in high school, but I've watched that. But the other thing I have watched is myself. The same mistakes I used to make. I see kids make them. We had a new girl come to the school. She didn't speak English real well, but the kids in her class really went out of their way to be friendly to her and to include her, and she just pushed them away. Now, I have the feeling she was doing exactly what I used to do. She was uncomfortable because she wasn't that good at English. Yeah, more forest fire there. She wasn't that good at English, and wasn't sure if they were making fun of her or what. But I know, looking at it from the outside, they were really making an effort to be friends with her. But she couldn't see it. And that's a mistake I used to make. Looking back, I know kids were reaching out to me, and I just couldn't accept it. Now there were the bullies, and not bullying wasn't as big as it is for other kids. I honestly remember one true bullying experience from my high school life. That was in 8th grade. But for the most part, it was more me that was the problem. And you know, this is horrible to admit. Sometimes kids actually invite bullying just by how they act. And I was one of them. So a lot of times we just need to start with ourselves, fix ourselves. Then it's a lot easier to worry about the other stuff. Now, I have no clue what just happened to my video. That is very pink, whatever it is. Did I stick my thumb over the camera? I have no idea what's going on here, but I hate to think how much of the road I missed by recording my thumb. Well, it looks like what I did is set the iPad down on its case because I edited out a little bit of video here just so you didn't have to watch that. But I'm in the same spot where I was when you started seeing the red. So I think I just set the iPad down. Anyway, I'll just cut to the chase here. Basically, what I've learned is, and speaking as a teacher too, the students I remember, they've kind of fallen into two categories. Now, if you help me a little, I'll remember you, no matter who you were. At least for now, I do. But the students I can really remember are the really awful students, the ones who caused a lot of trouble, because you're just going to remember them. Sorry. I wish it weren't true, but it is. And the other ones you remember are the ones who really stood out because of what they did, in a good way. The ones who sat in the back of the room and were really quiet, you hardly ever interacted with them, you don't remember them as a teacher. You know, they always think, well, I'm a good kid. Why doesn't Mr. Waskowitz remember me? Well, it's because you never did anything memorable. That sounds horrible and harsh, but it's true. And honestly, when I was in high school, he wants, or she, I don't know. Well, honestly, when I wants to walk across the road, when I was in high school, I didn't do anything memorable. I was one of the quiet kids that sat in the background. Once in a while, I did something weird, thinking that was how you get attention. And I see high school kids do that too. They act weird, thinking that's the way you get attention. But really, what gets attention is what you accomplish. So again, what can you do? Instead of worrying about what you can't do or what you don't have, worry about what you can do and what you can have. With what I make, I'm never going to have a real nice house. But you know what? What can I make the house that I do have? Some of the old people and young people in this town have criticized the color I painted it. But you know what? I don't care. It makes me happy. You know, I'm learning to find that contentment within myself and with what I can do. And once I'm content within myself, then I have a lot more to offer other people. To be honest, I started doing fountain pen reviews pretty close to this time. I think I've been doing them about a year. I had thought about it probably 3 years ago. I first started watching Stephen Brown and then Matt Armstrong and a couple others, but Stephen Brown was the main one. And I thought, you know, I could do that. But I never did. I did film part of one video once, but I look back on it and I think, why didn't I? Well, I'll tell you why I didn't. Because I was nervous. I was self-conscious. I thought, well, this is stupid. I thought somebody's going to criticize me. I'd actually put up a couple videos on YouTube. Most of them are down now for various reasons, but you know, I put a few videos on YouTube. There's one in particular got all kinds of nasty, negative comments. You know, I got called, well, a couple interesting names. I got some threats and such. It was, you know, seriously, it was a tour of an old school. It was nothing. I didn't make fun of anything. I just kind of, it was boring, but you know, I just kind of walked around an old school and took video. So I got threats over that video, and it wasn't by local people. One of them was from England. You know, seriously, who cares? But I allowed that to shut me down for a long time. And that's why I didn't do fountain pen reviews for a long time. But now I'm doing them. I'm doing these long, epic driving videos, which honestly I think are kind of boring. But you know, who cares? If you don't like it, don't watch it. And if you've been listening this long, wow, I'm impressed. But coming back to contentment, big part of contentment is being satisfied with what you have. But the other part of contentment is being satisfied with what you can create. But don't worry about what you don't have. You know, I'm never going to have that dream house. But I can create a lot of that. I can't live along that river valley that I showed you earlier. But you know what? I can create a nice environment. I would love to be isolated like that, but you know what I have? I can walk to work every day. I love walking to work every day. seriously, that is, if I ever move, that's one of the things I have to have. I have to be able to walk to work. There's something I do have that I wouldn't have if I lived in that cool river valley. I'd have to drive my car every day. Ew. And it would be a long commute, too. Ew. It's pretty at this time of year, but imagine doing this drive in the winter. Because seriously, I'd be doing this drive in the winter if I lived there. So, yeah, learn to create the best of what you do have. My garden? Okay, so I don't own a ranch, but you know what? I don't want to work that hard. My garden is the right level of work. In fact, I keep expanding it, which maybe someday I'll be sorry. But I love my garden. I'd rather have my garden than some big old ranch anyway. Cows are cool and I like eating them, but I get a lot more joy out of eating from this garden and taking care of those little plants and stuff. And as angry as I got at that little bunny that I put up here earlier, he is cute. I like watching it. Now I'm finding contentment there. Yeah, I wish I had more money, but to get more money, I'd have to give up teaching. And you know what I learned? I love teaching. Yeah, I'd like to try something else, but at the same time, what an awesome job. I like kids. Not in a creepy way. I just like being around them. I wouldn't be teaching them if I didn't. Now, I don't like little kids, but that's another story. That's why I teach high school. No, I don't. I'm glad I don't live with a teenager. I'll be honest. It's nice just to be able to leave them behind at school. Maybe that's part of why I'm single. But what I would challenge you to do, instead of looking at what you don't have, look at what you do have and find the best in it. Yeah, I don't live in the Badlands, but you know what? It's not that far to drive to this that I'm in right now, or you see here. And honestly, do I really want to live out here, or do I just want to visit it? So, as far as contentment, one, be satisfied with what you have. Second, don't always be satisfied. If you can make it better, make it better. Third, find the joy in what you do have. You might, looking back, honestly, if I had wanted to, I could have had the lab I wish I had if I'd stayed in that very first school I worked in. But I needed to grow up first. So here I am. But you know what? Now, maturity has taught me to accept what I have and find the best in it. Walking in that crappy lab I've taught in for the last 9 years, as a first-year teacher, I'd have given up and moved. But now, with a lot more maturity, I've found happiness in this. I am happy here where I live right now. I'm happy with my garden, I'm happy with my house, and what I'm not happy with, I'm able to change and fix and improve. And when I first started out in life, I think I was just too darn young to really do that and appreciate it, figure it out. Alright, so we're going to close here. I'm going to do a few photographs. I used to live here. Glad I don't anymore. Forest fire. I took this one probably a year or two after it happened. Another view down the road I was driving, only this time we're looking north, and that's the Little Missouri River. Texas Longhorn. Some cattle in the winter. In fact, a few winter scenes here. I love this one. I want to go back and do this one again now that I know how to do it. Another winter, it's not so wonderful. I took this one just during the drive, actually. Another one during the drive. In fact, till we get to the sunsets, these are all during the drive. Just beautiful setting. Davis Dam. There's some baby Hereford calves. Aren't they cute? I think they're so cute. Mama and her baby. If I complain about my classroom, imagine teaching in this school. And yes, there's windows on the other side. Deer jumping over a fence. And if I complain about my house, I could be living in this one. And a few sunset pictures that I took 2 years ago along that same road. Look at that forest. Look at those buttes. Yeah. So, when I get upset, I have to remember, I am already living in paradise, and I am already living the dream. We'll see you later.